Most business owners are using AI for basic tasks like emails. The ones that are getting ahead, they're using it to transform how they work. I'm Tania Gomez. 6 months ago, I didn't know the difference between ChatGPT and a chatbot. Now I'm learning from AI experts, testing tools in real businesses, and sharing everything that works. Because AI won't replace you, but someone using AI will. This is the AI Apprentice. Join our free community of practice at providercollective.com.au, where hundreds of business owners are learning together. We start as AI apprentices, but we leave as masters. Let's get into it. Welcome to the AI Apprentice. My name is Tania Gomez, and today I'm joined by Dr. Elise Ferdinands. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Before we jump into it, can you tell us a little bit about your research and your background and what you do today with both marketing and with AI?
Great, yes. So my main role is I'm an academic, so my research is in mostly social media and digital marketing. That's my area of specialty. It's a pretty broad area, but I look a lot at influencers and brand-to-brand relationships. I've also worked in industry, mainly in media, as a media manager. So I work as well today as a consultant in that space, as well as through content.
Beautiful. You sit kind of in this interesting section between academic, media marketing, content creator. How does that come from? What's your story? Where did that kind of begin? Because being an influencer and being an academic aren't things that usually go together.
No, not at all. To be honest, when I started my career, I originally wanted to work in print. So I wanted to work as a magazine editor. That was my ultimate dream goal. Went to uni as an undergrad in marketing, and I was, your classic magazine intern at the time, doing the coffee run, the printing, the photocopying, etc. Loved my time there, but during that time, I kind of realized that there was this shift happening and print really was evolving and changing. And at that same time, this was kind of like the beginnings of Instagram. So I started kind of building a bit of a following on Instagram, starting really early days in content creation. I had an old school blog, all of that kind of stuff. So then I ended up moving into kind of working in social media. I basically always worked in social media, digital marketing. And then I decided I wanted to know more about it. So I did a PhD specifically on that topic as well. So that's kind of how it evolved. And yeah, I am one of those people who to my own detriment, do 1,000 things at once. But I also think it's like the social media, digital marketing space is so interesting. There's so much happening. It's also a field that's so much in its infancy. Yeah. So there's just a lot happening. So you kind of want to be involved in everything.
Yeah. So did you have to watch a lot of Kardashians as part of your research? Was that like prerequisite for your research?
Look, there are some fun parts of the research, yeah.
That's hilarious. And what have you seen since AI has come around? How is AI shifting things like influencers and marketing?
Yeah, so it has a big role, of course, in every single field, basically, at the moment. There are some areas where it actually hasn't made as much of a dent as I kind of was expecting, especially in terms of content creation, because when it does start to infiltrate content creation, there's quite an immediate backlash against it, especially using like AI influencers, creating content. I don't know if you've seen kind of like some online stores that are using kind of AI to create imagery. There's a bit of backlash around it. So in that space, it hasn't kind of taken off as much as I initially expected. Where it has though is in kind of like personalisation, targeting, especially social media ad spend. That's where we're seeing like a really huge kind of shift in the landscape, and also an even more increasing attention towards data and metrics and how that could influence what we see in terms of marketing.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk to you more about hyper personalisation, which seems to be the amazing use of AI in every field, but in marketing and the sales process of businesses. The more personalized you can get that message and the more metrics you can get around the time to deliver that message, the higher the probability that someone's going to buy from you.
100%.
So what does that look like in AI? How has that really shifted, and what are the trends that you're seeing that make that both accessible and effective?
Yeah. Well, accessible is just from a basic level. If you're any sort of business that does any sort of kind of online ads, especially let's talk Meta. So if we've got Facebook and Instagram ads, they've had a huge shift towards introducing tools like dynamic creative optimization or DCO. A lot of tools around that where you can essentially, instead of saying, okay, your classic A/B test, let's put, this ad and this ad to the same audience and see which one performs. Through AI, we can do this at a really increased scale. So you can have, 20 different images, you can have 20 different pieces of copy or call to actions, and the model or the AI model will essentially work out which of these is going to be more effective to your targeted audience. We can also look at where that is effective at different stages of the customer journey. We can look at, what time are people more receptive to these messages, in the morning, at night. Does that change for different audiences, different age groups, different demographics, different psychographics? So this is where we can really kind of minimize this notion of media wastage. So the money that we spend that essentially is going to people that they're not interested in our ads, or they've already made their decision and that's not going to change. So we can really optimize our media spend when we're looking at social media ads using AI.
And is that available for everybody, or is this just something that is, for big businesses? Is this how do you do this?
So big businesses, it's pretty much most big businesses will have already rolled it out. It's something that's increasingly becoming available to smaller businesses if they're doing any sort of meta ad spend. You can do it from a different capacity. So the bigger businesses obviously spend a lot of money with Meta, so they get more opportunities in the sense of these up to the minute data. But anyone who's doing any online ads can essentially access these tools.
How do you think that's going to shift marketing into the future?
I think there's a really interesting shift in this idea of personalisation. There is kind of two camps where you have this debate where some people absolutely hate ads that are directed to them. They really hate this idea of their data being utilised in order to market to them. But then you've got this other flip side where you've got people who love the fact that they could be, looking up something and then they get all these ads fed to them and then they're like, yeah, that's what I was looking for, and I'm going to click through to that and I'm going to convert and make that purchase. So there's two sides to that story. There's also an increasing debate around, the use of our data. So that's going to influence that decision as well. But on a wider scale, it's really going to help businesses to really use every dollar to the best of its ability. So just really minimizing this idea of wastage. It's kind of increasingly sped up the testing process. So where the testing process might have said, okay, we're going to put these ads in market for a month and see how they go, and then stop running the ones that aren't working, we can speed this up and do it at such a faster pace, which means that the influx of ads are actually going to go through faster as well. So we're going to be seeing more ads. We might be seeing them for lesser amounts of time, and they're going to be increasingly targeted to exactly what we are looking at.
Yeah, I can see both camps. I can see how this is both scary and amazing. As a business owner, I love the idea that I can only send my message to the people who need my services now, and that's what usually something like Google AdWords is really good for, because they're searching for it, so it's a hotter lead than showing someone on Meta or LinkedIn where they might have to see it multiple times before they're actually ready to purchase. So if you can actually get enough data about when someone needs your product and feed it to them then and spend most of your money then, that sounds like a good idea. How then does that affect the rest of the marketing funnel of trying to nurture people over a period of time? Does that mean that those things aren't as needed, or does it depend on the volume of clients and how many you can actually get down to the conversion point?
Yeah, it really depends on what the kind of business is and also how big their audience is. So we always want to kind of have people who are at the awareness phase. We want to kind of pull people into the funnel, and then hopefully we're always going to have people at that conversion phase as well. So it's basically just really kind of hitting home and using, social media advertisements and digital marketing, that really targeted, personalized form of marketing at the bottom half of the funnel. And increasingly, especially if you have the budgets, we're using that awareness play for the classics like the TVCs, the billboards. That's where the awareness is coming through for a big business, and then utilizing digital paid ads for the lower half of the funnel.
And when we talk about hyper-personalisation, what exactly is being personalised? Because, you know, I got the first ad the other day. I can't remember if it was LinkedIn or if it was Meta that actually said, "Hi, Tanya," in an ad in text. That was the first time that I've seen that. And I sent that straight to my marketing department. I thought that was awesome. Definitely got my attention. It's all about getting eyeballs. Definitely got my attention. But like, are we just talking about embedding their name? Are we talking like how are you able to edit an ad to be personalized?
Essentially everything now. So whereas in the past it was kind of, you know, circling down on the location or basic demographics, now it's really to the point of kind of like niche interests. Like the niche interests that you see in the back end can be so hyper specific, and the way people interact online is really lending itself to these hyper niche segments, so we can really kind of directly hit home with them, because they are ultimately fantastic customers, especially for smaller businesses where it's really hitting home one particular pain point. For example, if you could target just that really niche audience, then you know your conversions are going to win off the back of that. So basically every element can now be personalized in the back end, especially of Meta. But then raises the question is, with that LinkedIn ad you saw, if every ad is going to say, you know, "Hi, Tanya," is it going to be effective anymore? So it's all about how all of these elements are going to evolve over time.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, I wonder how quickly we become immune to personalization, and how quickly then we go, well, I'm not going to look at ads. I'm now going to use, you know, ChatGPT search, whatever ChatGPT ads are going to look like. If then it becomes, well, I'm going to get an agent to go and find me 15 quotes. As an example, at the moment, I'm trying to find venues for a couple of events, and it's very much my admin person calling the venue's admin person, getting the rate card, getting the availability, getting the proposal, and then comes back to me to make a decision. All of that types of things, of very transactional things like booking a venue, could be done by my AI agent and the venue's AI agent. In that kind of scenario, and I guess there's lots of products and services that could be like that, in that kind of scenario, does that replace needing marketing? And like, you're not going to need a glossy, pretty website, are you, if it's my agent making a decision with another agent? Do things like websites and other marketing become obsolete?
Well, long tail search is becoming increasingly important for AI. So where people are putting their search terms into ChatGPT instead of Google, if you kind of even look at the phrasing, for example, if someone is writing in Google, like let's just say like, "My fridge broke this morning," so I was looking to see, okay, I need to find a replacement that fits these dimensions. Traditionally, if you were to put that in Google, you might just say, you know, fridges, you know, type that, you know, specific search term in. I personally put it in ChatGPT this morning. I put the dimensions of the space. I put the liter that I needed for the fridge, and ChatGPT came up with 3 options for me, and that pretty much narrowed my search. And that's kind of the style of customer journey I think we're going to increasingly see. What that makes really important is that when we are creating our websites, we need to make sure that all of the key terms are those that are what people are searching on ChatGPT. Generally, that seems to be more of a question, so a long tail search. So, you know, I'm looking for a fridge that fits this dimensions. These are the features that I'm looking for. So all of that is actually still being pulled from the website. So the websites are still going to be just as important. I then went onto the website, looked at all of the details there, and double checked, you know, that it was part of my aesthetic, what I wanted, etc. So I definitely think all of those elements of marketing are not going to change in effectiveness. It's just the journey that it takes us to get there, essentially.
That's interesting. You work with data every day. How are you seeing AI and analytics change the way that campaigns are planned, tested, optimized compared to the traditional approaches?
So whenever you do have data that you can work with, past data, you can essentially model that to see what your optimal spend will be, for example. So we can look at what our past performance is. We can then say, okay, we need to spend X amount of dollars, and if we spend X amount after that, it's not going to be as effective. So what's our optimal point of efficiency? So that's been that data, or using that data that we have built up, has been really effective in kind of planning our ads, planning our ad spend, as well as optimizing. So all of that data, honestly, it's ridiculous how much data has become so important in the paid ad spend space, in quite a short period of time, when you do have these models that can really shift through the numbers and work this out at such a mass scale. But what I found the biggest change has been really the testing component. So moving from that classic A/B testing to just testing at a mass scale, moving through that process much, much faster and getting to what your optimal point is and letting that run for a longer period of time. So essentially more effective ads based on whatever your outcome is. So conversion, engagement, whatever that is.
Yeah, that's interesting. When you mention that we usually have a month, most marketing agencies I've worked with are like, we have to leave it in there for 3 months. We can't touch it for 3 months. But if we can then test it on A/B split test over multiple different ads over the first 2 days, and then iterate and actually get to that ad point faster, it does sound like a much more sped up and effective process, hopefully, to make sure that the ad is converting. Without breaking any confidences, can you walk us through an example of a brand or a campaign where you think that AI or data-driven insights have really shifted the strategy or the business and the way that they market?
Yeah, so I can use an example of like audience segmentation, for example. So, as with any business, you always have audience segments, but with the data modeling available through AI, we've kind of increased all of the data points available within that audience segment. And a lot of kind of past decisions around, who we're targeting, at what stage of the customer journey, has really been based on a lot of kind of just broad data that wasn't as effective. And often that means like, yes, we really need to focus on Gen Zs and millennials, and that's our target audience. They're the people who are converting. But the flip side of that is that often, the Gen X and the boomers are kind of left out of that marketing equation. But using AI and kind of when you can work out, okay, yes, there might be this specific section of these older age groups that maybe they're not converting, but if you remove that part of the audience, the rest of that Gen X boomer audience is actually really, really effective. In this case that I'm speaking about, they ended up having a higher conversion rate than the millennials that we were kind of putting all the ad spend behind. So using that really deep audience segmentation, we were able to actually kind of broaden our age demographic strategy, and that ended up growing our conversions, our total conversions overall. So I think that's where AI can really help us in like just shifting through all of this data that we have and making sure that we're applying it to have an outcome that's going to ultimately drive what we're looking for. So in that case, it was conversions, and that audience segmentation really helped with that.
Yeah, that's an interesting example. I think to date with things like Meta, we've only focused on, as you said, only location or age. So we've filtered down. And you said, okay, well, we only use Facebook for this age group, and we use Insta for this, and we use TikTok for that, and really kind of targeted that. But that does mean you might have people who are a different generation using different tools or platforms that then aren't getting those messages at all, and you're then cutting all of them out.
You're excluding them, 100%.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Now, I understand that you had a case study around a glitter gel pen. Do you want to walk me through that a little bit?
So this is just a bit of a side, passion project that my sister and I set up, which essentially is kind of like a community space for people in their kind of late 20s and 30s to kind of connect essentially over books, but really it's about just connecting with like-minded people. This is just a recent kind of business that we created that succeeded really fast. So I think there was a bit of a gap in the market there that we were able to fill. So yeah, it's been a really exciting, fun endeavor.
Yeah. And how do you think ventures like that would be able to use things like AI to amplify their message?
Well, we've been using AI with it from the beginning, but kind of where we see it moving in the future is really kind of that depth in audience segmentation. We also look at a lot of kind of like recommendations. So we're kind of exploring the use of AI to really nail down these really specific kind of genres. So, book talk is a really kind of big thing. And there's a lot of these like super micro sub genres that are happening on there. So we're kind of exploring the use of AI to put together what those trends are and try to like kind of hit them before it actually, almost gets labeled in the market, looking at like sentiment analysis and the type of words people are using online. So definitely that's kind of a space we're exploring at the moment that hopefully could be useful.
That sounds fascinating. Now, how do you think being an academic has impacted your work in the actual marketing work that you do? Do you think it's given you a new lens, and how has that taken it to the next level as far as getting real results in your campaigns?
Well, research is really the grounds for, everything new that we kind of push in the market. And I think it really helps also in kind of sharing our ideas, with people who are really just looking at the numbers and they're not really kind of looking beyond that. When you have research to support, the strategy that you're trying to implement, I find that really, really helps. So I'm constantly like dipping in and out of research to kind of pull these strategies because, whilst I've been talking so much about how important data is, I still think there is no data without that overarching strategy, over that. And you can't use the data effectively if you're missing that strategy. And I think research informing that strategy really helps because we kind of need that trial and error in order for anything to be effective and to be ultimately rolled out. So I use my research a lot in my actual like implementation as well.
And social media seems to have trends that go, viral.
Yes.
And if you can capture viral trend, it can really propel your business. What is a trend, and how do you use things like AI to predict what the trends are and where you should spend your time and effort?
Yeah, I mean, ChatGPT especially is a really good tool for kind of trying to identify trends before they really catch on and then using that to try to push them out to try to go viral. That being said, I still maintain the fact that there is no recipe for virality. Like there's no, like, if you do A plus B plus C, your video will go viral. I still, my own videos I create that go viral, I often still don't fully understand why they did that. And when I say that, it means that there is some sort of kind of overarching appeal that, hits home at people. It's that idea of connection that really lends itself to something being amplified and being shared. So what I personally look at is, especially if you're looking at TikTok, Instagram Reels, anything like that, what is something that somebody will be able to watch and in the first 3 seconds they are interested in, because that's number one. You need someone to actually continue watching, and that hook is generally the hardest thing to nail or to capture. So the first 3 seconds is so important, but then also, is that content shareable? Because having somebody share that content, whether that's in a group chat, whether that's, with their friend, even like reposting on TikTok or reposting on Instagram, they're the specific metrics that the social media platforms view as, oh, this is something that is worthwhile content. And they're the kind of elements that help it go viral. So yeah, number one is the hook, and number two is this actually shareable content? They're the two important metrics in virality.
Wow, that's really interesting. For marketers or founders and creators listening, what are the skills or mindset shifts that they need if they want to thrive in a world that has so much AI in use?
Yes. So my first kind of element that I really think about is actually thinking about something first before we plug it into AI. And that's just because I find that even with myself, when I do have an idea or when I am brainstorming something, sometimes, my, default activity is let's just throw it in ChatGPT or some sort of AI to kind of see what bounces back and kind of build my ideas from there. But what I do find is that I do limit myself sometimes when I do that. So as much as I integrate AI in my work every single day, I'm trying really hard to do kind of the work in an analog manner first. So whether that's brainstorming in a meeting room or having a chat on the phone or just literally blank Word document, typing some ideas out and then putting it into AI, just to make sure that I'm not kind of losing that creativity, because in a world that's increasingly dominated by AI, it's going to be this human factor that really sets us apart even more. So I think it's really important not to lose that. But then the other piece of interesting advice that I've received when I was in a AI talk was to actually have ChatGPT, for example, on your phone and as an app, and have it on your first page and look at it a lot in terms of when you're trying to find something out or you're trying to do some research or whatever, plug it in there, because it's going to become even more of a constant force in our lives, and we really want to be on the forefront of experimenting with it. So at present, not everybody is using AI. Like, obviously, there's a big shift towards it, but we're such early days. So it's really all about experimenting at this point in time. So actually using it as something that's almost like fun, like just playing around with it, being experimental. You don't always have to implement everything that comes out of AI, but I think having it as a tool, or having it as a tool in your overarching marketing toolkit, is something that's going to be really effective.
Yeah. And I think that goes across every area of your business,
Yes,
right? It's
exactly.
really just the more you use it, the more you can realize how you can use it effectively and what the uses will be that'll actually help you move the needle in your areas of business.
Exactly.
When we're talking about hyper-personalization, branding, marketing, is there anything that we should be talking about that we haven't spoken about yet today?
I believe just with hyper-personalization, we really want to make sure that we've got that human element in there as well. So when we are breaking people down, or essentially we're reducing, a person to, age, demographic, psychographic, what they're interacting with online, what are these key topics that they're interacting with. We also want to combine that with taking a step back and making sure we understand as a whole what are kind of sometimes these kind of feelings or these movements or trends that actually capture kind of these human essence that can't always be articulated through a data metric or a data point. So I think it's combining the two with hyper-personalization, because if we do get too stuck into just reducing everything to a data metric, I think sometimes we kind of see these ads coming through as almost like a bit robotic in essence, and they kind of miss that key capturing of different elements of the human experience. And that's why we have these kind of, these micro movements that really start to appear online, and then they build up. I mean, even at the moment, I feel like one of the really big trends is a lot of people on, TikTok and Instagrams kind of saying, I am actually addicted to my phone, and kind of acknowledging they are and saying, yes, I use it so much and I don't want it to always be that way. I don't know if you've seen the trend where someone has their laptop open with a timer, like a 60-minute timer, and it's like this idea of forcing themselves to sit through boredom. So they literally have the computer in front of them on a 60-minute timer, they have their phone recording them and they time lapse it, and they just show themselves literally sitting there for an hour trying not to get distracted by their phone. And I feel like these kind of movements are really kind of picking up in space, and kind of I think being really cognizant to seeing like what are these trends that are coming through. They don't always get picked up by the data. So that's why it's as well, having that element of human thinking, combining it with, the data metrics to personalize something, putting them together. And I think that is when we have really effective personalization and targeting.
Is that how we also avoid this whole idea of AI slop?
Hopefully, because there's I don't know if you saw as well recently, there was like a New South Wales government ad, and they had a kangaroo with a koala's head on it.
No, I didn't.
And it was literally like posted, and people are sharing it online being like, this was definitely created by AI. So these kind of moments are going viral as well, and you kind of don't want to have that as part of your, like, we want to embrace AI, but we don't want it to take the place of creators and artists and these people in society. So there's that really fine line between that. We definitely, AI slop is going to be everywhere, and how do we actually rise above that? How can we use AI effectively in a manner that's going to help us without diminishing human creativity and connection?
Yeah, it is really a hard a fine line. I have noticed over the past 6 months how my LinkedIn feed has definitely changed. And it is a little bit, I stopped using AI to write the post. I did in the beginning because it was so novel and new, and it was also getting great. Analytics was really good, or impressions was really good in the beginning. But I have noticed that I'll chat with ChatGPT or Claude or whichever LM and get a post idea, but then I will make sure that I write it myself, because I have noticed just the blanket noise that is out there otherwise. So yeah, it's hard to get the balance. Once you find a tool, it's hard. I think maybe it's this pendulum idea that we've gone all the way over here of using it in that example for posts, but then it'll come back and then sit somewhere in the middle where it just becomes a tool. And I was interviewing someone else recently, and they were talking about, they were a teacher, and they were talking about when the calculator first came out, a similar idea that to begin with, you weren't allowed calculators in tests, and then it came out and there's different permissions around it. And maybe we start thinking of AI and having a definitive spot where it is socially acceptable and effective to use AI in certain parts, and we realize that actually it's not okay in these certain parts, because either you get pushback or you get bad results, or similar things. The other two that come to mind are the Deloitte report that we saw, and there's another meme that's going around online. I think it was a Pakistani front page of a Pakistani newspaper where it left the little bit at the bottom saying, "Would you like me now to?" Yeah, so I think there's a few really good examples of what can go wrong if you're not paying attention to what you're outputting. But I guess it's also just so new, as you said, right? We're all just getting used to what this tool can do. So I would prefer to have a few slip-ups and then get it right than to be too scared to use it in case we're not using it perfectly.
Exactly. And I think that's the key as well, is kind of, finding that balance between, we want to experiment and use it as much as possible so that we can develop our skills and so we can be at the forefront, whilst, maintaining our creativity, essentially.
Yeah, and it's a skill like everything else, right? The more we use it, the better we're going to become, and hopefully over time we all, at various stages, become more proficient in using this new tool.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming today. If someone wants to reach out to you to learn more about what you do and get in touch, what's the best way?
LinkedIn and my socials. I spend a lot of time on my socials, so
I can imagine. Thanks so much for coming in. It was great to speak to you today.
Thanks for having me.
In 30 minutes, you just learned what most business owners will spend months trying to figure out on their own. Want to keep that momentum going? Join our free AI Apprentice community at providercollective.com.au. Hundreds of business owners testing tools and sharing real wins. Come and be an AI apprentice with me. Let's become masters together. I'll see you next week, or better yet, I'll see you inside the community today.